5 American citizens tonight are on the final leg of their years-long journey to freedom.
President Biden is celebrating the release of those 5 Americans.
So that was really great news. 5 Americans freed from Iranian jails, returning back to their families. In return for Iran freeing the 5 Americans, the USA also agreed to release 5 Iranians lodged in USA jails. Sounds like a fair swap, right? Except the US also agreed to free $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets.
Crooked Joe Biden just agreed to pay a $6 billion ransom.
A deal for their release involving unfreezing $6 billion in Iranian assets is underway. Chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce has the story. Good morning, Mary.
CBS's chief foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan on why some are criticizing the agreement.
Do you agree that such tactics may be necessary to free up Americans? Or do you share my concern that this type of deal making would encourage enemies of US to take more Americans hostage? And do you wonder why the USA continues to make these sweetheart deals with Iran while taking a very hard stand with others like Russia? The US has been here before. The Obama era witnessed a similarly controversial prisoner exchange that led to both acclaim and criticism. This is the plane that picked up the 400 million Swiss francs paid by the Obama administration to free up 4 Americans in January 2016. And this was done in a very hush-hush manner. The video that you saw was shot by a private individual. These historical overlap serve as a compelling backdrop, revealing how the country has grappled with such dilemmas over the years. Was it a necessary diplomatic move, or does it teeter dangerously close to compromising national interest? The Obama era exchange still resonates today, casting a shadow and drawing parallels with the current decisions. It raises an important question: how nations like US can tread the fine line between securing the safety of their citizens while upholding the principles that they stand on at the global stage. So are the US taxpayers paying the $6 billion ransom? No. So US is granting a waiver. That waiver will allow Iran to access $6 billion in oil revenue that has been blocked by US sanctions. Iran made this money in the past when US allowed some countries like India to buy Iranian oil but made them deposit the money in a special account in South Korea. Secretary of State Antony Blinken issued a sweeping waiver allowing international banks to allow for transfer of $6 billion that are in that frozen account in South Korea to be transferred to banks in Qatar without inviting US sanctions. Iran will then have access to that money from Qatar. Officially, and that's the keyword here, under the terms of this agreement, Iran will be allowed to use this money to buy food, medicine, and other humanitarian items that are anyway allowed under US sanctions. Okay, food and medicine. Seems quite innocent, right? No. While it's definitely a better deal than 2016, when President Obama just handed them cash, which Iran could have spent whatever way they wanted. This time though, US is going to have an oversight over how Iran spends this $6 billion. But what about the $6 billion that got freed up back in Iran? Because now they can use this money for essentials. So for a simple example, imagine Iran had to spend $6 billion of their own money, which they control, on food and medicine. Now they have access to this new money, which they can spend to buy that food and medicine. Do you think now they are going to go and say, now I have $12 billion, let me spend this entire $12 billion on food and medicine for my people? Unlikely. What is likely is that Iran may end up using the $6 billion that they have extra for something like terror funding. Iran regularly funds at least 12 organizations in the Middle East that have been sanctioned by the US. In previous years, Iran gave Hezbollah $700 million and $100 million to Palestinian groups, including Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They did that even when they did not have access to this $6 billion. Will they now increase their budgets to fund these terrorist organizations? That seems very likely. And now they're also going to have more money to fund their nuclear program that threatens not only the interest of US but also our allies like Israel. With Iran's well-documented connection to various terrorist groups, this question becomes almost impossible to sidestep. Is the United States, in pursuit of safety of its citizens, laying financial groundwork for threats that may hound it in future? These concerns underline the multifaceted complexities of international politics, where a single decision can lead to a myriad of unintended repercussions. As nations play their card on global stage, each of their actions is closely scrutinized, both by allies as well as competitors. And they don't just observe, they learn, they judge, and they decide their strategy in response. The American decision to unfreeze funds in exchange for safety of its citizens has sent ripples across the corridors of powers in the world. If other countries determine this to be America's weakness, with the potential willingness to make similar deals, is it unwittingly going to put a price tag on every American's head? The consequence of this precedent could be profound and far-reaching, potentially making Americans more vulnerable in those regions where stakes are high but rules of engagements are fluid and volatile. The delicate dance between safeguarding national interest and ensuring safety and well-being of its citizens is a very intricate ballet, choreographed against a backdrop of volatile international relations. One must wonder, what were the roads not taken? Were there avenues that were not explored which could have been more effective? Could a more intensified diplomatic endeavor or escalated economic pressure have yielded similar if not better results? When dealing with an adversary like Iran, should we show strength or weakness? It might be an opportunity lost. This Tehran Times headlines sadly captures precisely how Iran is going to remember this transaction.